Studios.
Welcome back to Laughing in the Dark, the podcast where I hang out in haunted places with comedians. This is another fixture in our Sunday Minisode series where I talk to you about your ghost stories. For this Minisode, I spoke to Matthew from Reno, Nevada. Matthew told me a story that sent chills down my spine about a visitation that he had while he was in Arizona after discovering the remains of a mummified baby. Here's the call.
Hello?
Hi, is this Matthew?
Yeah, it is.
Hi, Matthew. This is Sarah calling from Laughing in the Dark. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad we finally got a chance to connect.
Right?
Yes. This is probably the most anticipated ghost story call we've done yet this season because usually it's just on the schedule and we knock it out, but we made it happen.
Yeah.
You're calling from Reno, Nevada, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and from what I understand, I think your ghost story takes place in Arizona. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so how did you end up in Reno?
My family moved here and I followed.
Well, let's dig in. Why don't you get me started on your ghost story? I can't wait to hear it.
Oh, okay, sweet. Basically, my family, we owned some land in northern Arizona up by Kingman. My family had purchased it, and it was pretty far out there. If you're headed towards Kingman, you take this like left turn, and you got to drive all the way in the mountains. It's like an hour and a half drive into the mountains, and so we got a trailer up there in a cabin, and we built that like a garden and all kinds of stuff. We built we ended up having like 2 cabins on there and a fire pit. It was really nice.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah, and so basically, I used to dirt bike a lot, and for my 12th birthday, my uncle, he bought me a dirt bike, and I'd go trailing. I'd go off trail a lot, like really off-grid trailing and just go explore. And there was this one incident that took place. So this is kind of weird, but crazy. So I was like going on my dirt bike on this random trail. And so basically I get to this almost like an open field, and the wooded area had completely changed. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it almost felt like I crossed a portal or something, but there was no animals. It was completely dead quiet. The lighting was different. It was almost like an eclipse happened, but there was no eclipse over the sun. And
okay. And it's the middle of the day.
And yeah, this is the middle of the day. And so I'm just, cruising along on my dirt bike. I stopped for a minute to check this out because it's like a phenomenon I had never experienced before. And basically I stop on my dirt bike and I'm looking at the soil, and it's like this really soft soil, almost like something, but I could feel an energy, definitely from this land, and I was really connected to that energy. I'm pretty sensitive to energy, and it was just like a very powerful, settling energy. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. And there was like petroglyphs and stuff. I ended up like digging out there a couple times and finding some really cool stuff.
Wait, you said there were petroglyphs? What are those?
They're like just cave paintings on pottery and rocks and stuff that
Cool.
like people from thousands of years ago wrote. Yeah. And so I was digging up a lot of this pottery. I ended up digging up a baby that was wrapped up. He was mummified.
What?
Some kind of Native American descent. Yeah. And I kind of got freaked out. I was like 12 years old, and he
Oh
was
my
all wrapped
God.
up. And
Yeah.
so I put him back in the ground because I didn't want to mess with it. You know, I didn't want to take anything from the land. So I put him back in the ground and covered it up and everything. So I ended up like hopping back up on my dirt bike and setting off again. And I'm leaving, you know, this ground, and I get like a quarter mile into the woods, and the settings change again, and everything goes back to normal, and I'm going. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, my dirt bike just shuts off. Like everything shuts off, comes to a halt. And it, you know, it was a little warm. It was probably about maybe like 76, 77 degrees. It was pretty cool, but it was just a little warm. It was like a nice sunny day. And so I'm like, what the heck? You know, why did my bike just seize? And I get off my bike, and I'm checking everything, and I'm looking at the emergency stop. I'm looking at the clutch. I'm trying to start it. It's not starting. And I'm like, what is the problem? And as I'm thinking this, all of a sudden, like right behind me, I hear a mountain lion roar, like a mountain lion, and I just froze because I thought I was dead. I was like, oh, that's it. I'm dead, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm frozen there, petrified, almost just, I feel like waiting to die, and I'm just blue, petrified in that dark place. And I'm not dead yet. Like, I realize I'm not dead yet. And I'm like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah.
And excuse my language.
Oh, dude, it's an explicit
Excuse my
podcast. Don't
language.
worry.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I say fuck
so
all the
I
time.
turn
Don't worry.
around. Oh, okay, sweet. I do too.
Oh, great. We have so much in common.
So I finally muster up the courage out of this petrification, and to turn around and face it, whatever it is. And I turn around, and there's just nothing there. And I'm like, okay, where's the mountain lion? And I'm looking. And then all of a sudden, right behind me, I heard this man laugh, and it was like the deepest, scariest laugh I have ever heard. And it was almost like the laugh was all around me. Like I didn't know what direction the laugh was coming from. And it just froze me solid. All my hairs on my body instantaneously stood up. I was so scared. It chilled me to the bone. It literally chilled me to the bone, and I froze, and I was like speechless, and my heart was just racing, and it was such a powerful laugh. I'll never forget it. And finally I like turn around just in my peripheral, and there's just this guy, and he's about like 9 feet tall, or like to me it was like he was like 9 feet tall, but he must have been like at least 6'2", 6'3". He was Native American. There was bones and all that around his neck, like necklaces. He was wearing multiple animal skins. He had a coyote skin, a mountain lion skin over that one, a bear skin, some deer skin. And this dude is huge, like,
yeah.
But he's kind of like blacked out almost, but I can almost see his face. And finally I'm frozen solid, and I'm like, fuck this guy. And I turn around to face him, and he's just gone. There's nothing there. And I hear the laugh again, and I turn around, and he's standing there, and he literally just turns into a mountain lion and runs off into the woods. And I watch him just fade away into non-existence. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck was that? Like,
yeah.
And I grab my bike, my motorcycle. I'm shaking at this point, and it starts right back up. Like there was no problems at all. And it starts right back up, and I can see him still like in the wooded area, just kind of running around and like turning from a coyote to a mountain lion and then a crow. And I'm just scared out of my fucking mind at this point. And I just start hauling ass. I'm going like at least like 60 miles an hour straight back home. And, and literally, he's like flying. The crow is like following me, and he starts laughing like like how they laugh.
Yeah.
And so I get to the clearing finally in my house, and I just like throw my bike. I just let it fly off, and he stops in the circle where our clearing is, and he's just there. And
the crow.
I'm like, okay, the crow's just sitting there, and I'm like, Mom, I'm like screaming my mom's name, and I'm like, never mind, I'm just hallucinating. And so I look back, and he's the crow. Then I look back again, and it's the guy in the tree this time. And I'm like, oh my God, no, this isn't happening. I start screaming at my mom, and finally my mom comes, and I'm like, Mom, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, she can't understand me because I'm like talking a million miles an hour. I'm like shaking. Yeah. And I'm like sweating, and I'm freaked out. And she goes, "What crow? What are you talking about?" And then like looks over, and she doesn't see it, and it's not there anymore. He's like gone, and I'm like, "Oh shit, this is crazy." And it was a crazy experience, and yeah, I just kind of wanted to share that. But some other things happened following up to it too, or afterwards, that kind of connect to the story. I ended up like a month, maybe like a week or two or close to a month later, going back to that clearing, and the same thing happened, almost like the setting changed again, and I'm there, and this time I was like, like, blah, 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 I'm just going to check this land out because the energy here is really cool. And so I'm walking, and all of a sudden it's all dark because of all the trees, and there's not a lot of sunlight. So it's really thick forest, and there's like a beam of light shining through, just one solid beam of light onto this rock. And this rock's got little like cave paintings all over it. And I walked up to it, and there's just literally like an arrowhead made of obsidian just sitting there.
Wow.
And I'm like, do I take this? And so I ended up taking it, and I used it for a lot. I actually made it into an arrow. I killed a deer with it, and I just felt like that spirit had like given it to me. I don't know. I ended up giving it back to the land when we left. Just because I didn't really need it anymore, and I didn't, I never had it like smudged or anything. So basically we had these neighbors though, they lived all the way down at the bottom, and they owned a ranch, and I had told them what happened, and they were like, I thought I was crazy, and they were like, you're not crazy, because all this land was like two different tribes' land, and they told me a story where they were digging too, so they could dig for their horses and make an arena, and they found a human hand, and they kept it. Like the daughter had kept it, and then
the daughter kept the hand.
Yeah, they just kept it. Like they put it with their cattle bones and all that. Like they thought it was cool. Yeah, it was kind of weird. They're a little rednecky, but they're really nice people.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, basically, they kept the hand, and they were like playing with it and just kind of laughing about it. They're like, "This is crazy, I wonder how old this is." Well, anyway, like, so they went to bed and all that. Like the first night, they kept it, and like this native guy, like this spirit, came to her in her dreams and was like beating her ass and raping her, and then like the next day, she actually had marks on her. And
oh my God!
It was like, the spirit was very mad. It was like angry and aggressive at that point, because so they called, that same tribe, they have like elders, like medicine men down in Kingman. So they had to call Kingman the National Museum. And then the native guy right away was like, oh, okay, I got to get out there and rebury it, smudge it. and I gotta clear your guys' land of that energy, of that spirit. And so they did all that, and he reburied it and everything. And it, like, right away, there was no more like poltergeist. Like, it all just settled. Like, there was nothing after that. But yeah, so it was pretty intense. So I just kind of wanted to share that story. And I ended up talking, there's I have a couple of friends who are Native American, and I ended up talking to a couple of their elders, and basically they were telling me what I encountered was like a skinwalker or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he was probably just kind of telling me my totem and or all that. And because he wasn't violent or aggressive or anything like that. It was just, I don't know, like maybe he just wanted to scare me for fun because he was like protecting the land. I don't know. But I used to find a lot of Native American pottery. I ended up giving it back to, if you go to Kingman, there's a museum for all of it. And I ended up bringing a lot of it there from my school out there. And they were really happy to get their culture back and pieces back, you know. And it was just really cool.
That's really cool.
That's the story. Yeah, I wanted to share that story, and I don't know. I hope people have fun listening to it. And,
yeah, for sure. Well, then I also think, I mean, your encounter.
I mean, what's your opinion on it?
Well, what I was thinking was like when you found that baby, your initial reaction was, "I'm gonna put this back." I grabbed something I shouldn't have. I'm going to put it back, give it, like you keep saying, give it back to the land. And I'm just going to respect that and leave it alone. And then it seems like what happened was you were almost rewarded for having that kind of a respectful response. That it like seemed like fearful for you because it's so powerful. Yeah, but it almost seems like when I think of it, I imagine that Skinwalker was showing you how powerful he was and showing you this amazing display, but not harming you, not threatening you, not doing anything, but then leaving you a gift. I think that that's awesome.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It was really cool. And I wish till this day I would have kept it, but we ended up selling the land, and I just, you know, and it was funny because my grandma asked me where I had got it. She was like, "Where did you get that? How old is that?" And she took me to the museum, and they were like, "This is over like 1,000 years old." They were like, "We don't even know where you got this, but it almost looks like it's been used. Have you been using it?" And I was like, "A little bit, but I just got it." Like, and I didn't tell them the story. I ended up telling my grandma the story, and she totally believed me.
Cool.
She said she saw one out there too.
Oh, really?
A couple years prior. Yeah, she said she was following because there's herds of elk out there, and my grandma used to follow them, and she kind of learned their little course. So she'd go see them at night, like late at night. Well, she was out there one night, and she said she literally, like up from the road, she saw this man walking. And she was like, "What's a guy doing all the way out here on the road, you know, out in the middle of the night?" And she turned her, like lights on, her brights, to like see who the hell it was. And she said the same thing happened. Like the guy kind of glitched, and he was almost like a shadow figure. And then she saw him turn into a coyote and just keep going. And she was on no drugs or substances. She was completely like just everyday, typical, wasn't under the influence. And she shared that with me, so I shared the story with her, and it was just kind of cool. But my grandma was half Native American, so
yeah.
Who knows,
so for her,
you know?
she was like, "It's my culture." I totally believe it, of course.
Yeah. So yeah, she totally just believed it, but you know, I'm more white. I'm more just white, and you know, it was crazy, but I totally agree with what you were saying. You know, I think maybe that's what it was, and that's really cool.
That's really, really cool. Thank you so much for telling the story. That's awesome.
yeah, it was very awesome. And, I hope people can hear it. And, if other people have stories that are similar, identical, it'll inspire them to share as well.
For sure.
And
Actually, so this
yeah,
is my first call this season that involves a skinwalker. There's sort of a unique story to hear.
sweet.
But last season I got one
Oh,
that there
yeah,
was a
really?
skinwalker. Uh-huh. Um, I named the minisodes. So if you go back to season 1, I forget what I
Uh-huh.
called it, but it's something that includes skinwalkers in it. So you'll see it and you'll be like, oh yeah, this is the one.
Was it, oh, sweet. Was it a little bit similar to my story or?
No, not really. I think I've
Okay.
heard so many ghost stories, right? So I'm trying to remember exactly how
Uh-huh.
his story went, but I don't remember where it took place, but it was like in the woods, and I think for him, he saw, just like you, a really tall man figure type thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was he
Huh.
was taking it as very like almost demonic. And I think
Hmm.
I don't want to like misconstrue it though, because it was like a year ago that I heard this. So, bear with
Oh,
me.
okay.
But I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
like if you
I'm
go
better
back
with
to,
you.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. If you go back to season 1, you can hear his story and kind of maybe it might be interesting for you too to be like, oh, yeah, it was kind of like that. Or like, oh, no, for me, it was different. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's
no,
really
that would be
cool.
cool because I haven't encountered a lot of people with similar stories and
Yeah.
like anything like that. But I never looked at it the way you said it. That kind of gives me a better understanding of what happened and a better explanation.
Yeah. Well,
I
I'm no
honestly I
expert. I
haven't
don't
gone out
know.
there since.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of makes sense. And for years, I've just kind of wondered, what that meant, that whole experience, like why me,
Yeah, for sure.
And I even told a mental health professional the story, and he believed me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
So
great.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was crazy, but it was definitely an experience. And there's also just sometimes that still happens to me. I was driving up towards the other day with my buddy. We're driving to a job up in Truckee, and we're driving through the woods, and the same thing happened, like that phenomena, like where it just felt like we were in a completely parallel universe for a minute, and we were both just dead silent through the whole thing. And then I kind of was looking up at the sky, like, what's going on? And finally everything goes back to normal, and I wasn't going to say anything. And my buddy's like, dude, did you see that? Like, it almost like we were just on another planet for a minute, huh? And I was like, yeah, dude, wasn't that weird? And he was like,
Interesting.
dude, that was crazy. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's why I tell people, like, before you go hiking or into the woods at all, just make sure to go with somebody. Make sure you do a little bit of research on the land, and make sure you know what you're doing, because I've heard a lot of like weird, wacky stuff just from a lot of hicks, hanging out with hicks, and people who go hiking and stuff. I've heard similar stories, and
So
I've always just been intrigued by it.
when you say it felt like you were in another, what did you say? Like it was another dimension?
Like a parallel universe, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it almost felt
How,
like I
like,
walked through a portal
how,
for a minute, and
yeah, can you describe that? Like, how, like, what gave you that impression?
like the energy, it almost feels like you're walking on Saturn. Like you're just getting all this energy, and it's all jumping through you. And it almost like, when you're taking a picture on like Snapchat with like the filters,
Yeah.
imagine just a complete filter on reality for like over a minute, and different energy, like no animals, the birds just instantly stop chirping, and like it literally feels like you're in another universe. You're not here on Earth for a minute. You're somewhere else. And it's the craziest sensation ever. It's the craziest feeling. But
That's
it's happened to
wild.
me multiple times. Yeah, and the trees change and everything looks different. And you're like, am I here on Earth? Like,
How
what is
does it
going
look
on?
different? Like, how do they change? Like colors
They're just
or?
completely different trees, completely different colors. Even the sunlight and the shadowing changes, and it looks like someone put a filter on reality on your eyes for a minute. It's crazy. It's definitely a phenomena, but I've had a couple friends, actually many people who are very experienced in like hiking and climbing or just going out in the wilderness have told me that, and they're like, no, dude, I've literally walked into like other dimensions on accident in the middle of the woods. And it was like, I was completely in another place for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, dude, I've done that too. It's so weird. And I don't know. I can't describe it other than that. And like, there's all this energy. You can just feel it. Like you can just feel it in you. And it's trippy. That's the only way I can put it. It's a trip for sure.
That is so cool. I wonder how many people are going to listen to this minisode and go, "Oh my God, yeah, I've totally done that. I know exactly what he's talking about." You know what I mean?
I hope so. You know, that would be, same here. Like that would be really cool, because a lot of people, they won't open up about it until like I open up about it, and then they're like, "Oh wow, you've done that too," and I'm like, "Okay, now we're getting somewhere. This is cool."
Yeah. Well,
you know.
And then
And I've had many people tell me that same experience, and they're like, "Dude, I just thought I was like crazy," and I'm like, "No, dude, it's happened to me too on the most random times, like, you know." And that's why I don't go, because I used to just go playing in the forest when I was a kid just for fun, and now I'm just aware of that, you know. And
yeah, no,
I mean, I have found some really weird shit just out in the middle of nowhere. One time I found like these slabs out in the desert towards Mexico where people get sacrificed.
what?
And I walked out there on like a full moon
Like an
night.
Incan,
Yeah.
like Inca or Aztec? Is that what you mean? Like an old
It's
tribe?
some kind of
Like people don't still get sacrificed there? Is what is the question?
Oh, they do. Yeah, they'll
What?
like kidnap them. Yeah, from Mexico, and it has to do with some kind of Catholic cult.
What?
And they'll take them out there, and they'll like cut them. They'll kill them out there on these slabs under like certain full moon and certain moon like equinoxes and shit. Yeah, it was like we went out there one time, me and this kid Johnny, because I didn't believe him, and he took me out there, and it was like scary as fuck. I was like, dude, let's get the fuck out of here, like. And he's like, well, you didn't believe me, bro, but I got family in the cartel, and this is where they take people. And I was like, oh, my God. Dude,
Holy
let's
shit.
get the fuck out of here.
Wait, you went there while they were doing a sacrifice?
No, they weren't doing it. It was like after they had done one, and there's like candles around the slabs, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's like.
Was there blood on the slab and
like,
stuff? What?
Yeah, there was like blood on the slabs. And I was
skulls?
like, bro, like. Yeah, and like the energy just from it, I was like, dude, let's just fucking leave. Like, I don't even want to be anywhere near this altar or whatever the fuck this is.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, you know, it was pretty scary. But yeah, that was like almost pretty much to Mexico. If you like go out in that desert, there's a lot of weird shit out there too.
Hey,
like,
wait, and you're saying it's
southern Arizona.
And you're saying it's a Catholic cult?
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know how they like human traffic people, like the coyotes. They work for the cartel and they like traffic people. Well, like they'll just sometimes to their weird god, like they'll kidnap people who don't pay up or whatever the fuck, or if a bad drug deal, and they'll take them out there and do like crazy satanic rituals and shit. It's crazy as fuck.
So it's satanic. It's not Catholic.
Well, it has something to It's
Or
some
Christian-
satanic branch of Catholic.
Wait, what? now
Catholicism.
I'm really confused.
Yeah, I really don't know.
Yeah.
100%. He's Mexican and his brothers do it because they're in the cartel. And that's all he told me. He just said it had something to do with the Day of the Dead, Catholicism, the way we believe, the voodoo part, and I was like, I didn't even want to ask him any more questions. It was just scary.
Yeah, this is like a grab bag of beliefs. But that is wild. That is super wild.
Really,
no matter
really
what
wild.
the organization is for it, that whole thing is just insane. That's crazy.
Yeah, like you wouldn't think it would be real, but it's totally real. And there's people who do that kind of shit in the middle of the night on certain moons and weird shit. I don't even know, but it's crazy. I've been there, I've seen it, and it's like really weird. And
Wow.
I don't know. It's pretty trippy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another crazy thing in Arizona I've seen, and it's a really neat place.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you've kind of given us a little glimpse of the horrors of Arizona. That's great.
Right?
Thanks for your call, Matthew. Do you have a ghost story that you want to tell on Laughing in the Dark? Email us at litdarkpodcast@gmail.com or write to us in our Contact Us form on our website, litdarkpodcast.com. We may want to feature you on the show. Thanks so much for listening.
Carnival Studios.